Len Perna joins us on Sports Byline. Len has 30-plus years experience in the sports and entertainment industry. He's a top recruiter for coaches, commissioners, and team management's top talent. And Len established his company, TurnkeyZRG, as a leader in the space, known for its professionalism, confidentiality, and tremendous hires. And Len Perna is an expert in understanding organizational culture, fit, and blending personalities. Len, when it comes to hiring key team and sports executives, coaches, managers, and commissioners, what makes sports different than other hiring fields?
15 years ago, nobody used search firms to do anything, first of all. It was very much call who you know, call your friends, call people that look just like you. And if you exhausted your own Rolodex and you couldn't find the right person, then, maybe you posted the job somewhere and saw what came inbound. So today, it's so competitive in sports, both on the field and also in the front office. You've got to have the best people playing in each position. You've also got to pay attention to having a very diverse workforce. And if people only call their friends, then you don't get a diverse workforce. So people are using search firms today to make sure they run a process that produces a diverse slate of people. It's super inclusive, and that makes a front office better. It makes a coaching staff better, all the way around. So that's the big difference today versus maybe 15 or 20 years ago.
And let me just ask you, what's the difference in sports hiring as compared to hiring in other businesses? Because I've always found, being in sports as I have, that there is a dynamic difference in it. So tell me a little bit about how you see that.
Well, the reality is, there's a different pace to what we do in sports. And anybody that works in sports and has been in sports for a long time knows that it's essentially 365 days a year, and it's all day long. You don't get weekends off. You really don't get summers off. The seasons nowadays are just on the field, but off the field it goes 52 weeks a year. So the pace of what's going on in pro sports, college sports, entertainment, music is intense. And so we're looking for people that are super passionate about it, because you've got to be passionate about it in order to work every waking hour on it. So that's how we're filling out front offices today, is looking for people with passion for what we do.
How has the big salaries in this part of sports changed things over the years, Len?
The interesting thing is, there's big salaries on the field, and there are some big salaries when you get to the very top positions in sports. So let's call it, general manager positions, president and CEO positions. The salaries are pretty good. Some people are even starting to get equity in these teams. But for the most part, when you look at middle management or people just trying to break into sports, I think the salaries are pretty low. And, that's one of the things that kind of weeds out people, to see how passionate they are and see if they want to stick in sports and kind of work their way up to the top. But once you get up to the top, it does pay pretty well.
One thing I've always found in sports, Len, is that everyone is looking for an edge, and certainly that's witnessed by the Houston Astros baseball cheating scandal. How has that changed the landscape of what you do and how you go about finding the right people?
I don't think that's had much of an impact on what we do. Everyone is, tested when we go out and do a search and we identify candidates for a front office job or even a coaching job. Integrity, ethics, morals, values, we test for all of that. We ask about all of that. We do deep reference checking and background checking on people to make sure that there's no ethics issue or integrity issue with people. So we try to cover off on that, but that's the same thing we do with the skill stuff too. We try to make sure that people have the right skill set, they have the right work ethic, they got the right ethics. That's why you hire a search firm, to make sure that you've done the checking, done the due diligence, and know what you're getting.
I know you can't do this, but when I started the network, everybody I've hired in my company, I have not looked at a resume. I have talked to them, and I can tell within about 15 or 20 minutes whether this person has a lot of the things that you've been talking about. Now, I know that can't be done in the area that you're in, but how important is the communication aspect of finding the right people?
We talk to a lot of high-level executives. For example, we're doing a search right now for the next Big Ten commissioner. And there are a lot of executives that could potentially be candidates for that do not have a resume. For whatever reason, perhaps they've been in their current role for a long time, or they kept getting internal promotions where they are, or maybe they've been recruited to different jobs and they never really needed a resume. So we actually help executives put down on paper what they've done, and it sounds easy, but it's actually pretty hard. The really best leaders build great teams to do things, and so they tend not to think about accomplishments as their own. But when you're putting together a resume and you're potentially going to be a candidate for something like a commissioner role, it really makes sense to take your time and try to put some bullet points on a piece of paper of things that you've been a driver of, even if you had a team helping you, that you drove some accomplishments. We tell people when they put together a resume that they should have every bullet point should start with a number, whether it's a percentage or a raw number. And each of those numbers should talk about impact on the business, impact on the team, impact in the community, and all of that. Theoretically, if you could represent it by a number, you'd be better off.
I was reading a little bit about your company, and it has become a tech-enabled disruptor of the prior executive search model. What was the prior executive search model then, Len?
Well, the prior executive search model is actually the current executive search model for every other company except ours. And it's a very old school model, which is, hire one of these other search firms. There's thousands of them, and they'll toss you a few resumes, and they'll give you their opinion about these resumes. And it's all a very subjective thing. And that is, in my opinion, the way it always used to be done and still is done by most firms. Our firm is very different. Our firm believes that you can reduce things to a number. And so we build an interview script. We start by talking to the client, figuring out what the key drivers, the key skills, the key attributes are for the job. And then we build an interview script around those key attributes. We test for those key attributes, and we score for those key attributes. And then we put those scores in a technology portal where our client can log in and see how we've graded out every single candidate with a numeric score. That's the Moneyball approach to what we're doing. It forces us to be rigorous. It forces us to focus on the skills and attributes that we've been given by the client. And it forces us to reduce something to a number. And then we also ask our clients to do the same thing. We give them the chance, when it's their turn to interview candidates, they also can go into our software and put down a number for each key attribute. And we think it just brings more rigorous to the process. And that rigor allows our placements to stay in their jobs longer. And we have statistics to back that up.
Yeah, the thing I'm wondering about, though, Len, is that the jobs are so varied. And can you use that same model for, say, somebody who is going to be a manager or wants to be a manager or a coach, as you do for an executive of a sports firm?
Yeah, you can use that for any position. In other words, the attributes and the skills that you're using for each role would be different, but the software that we've created and the scoring system that we've created, in other words, the template of how we run a search, could be used for any on-field position, any business position, any media position, really any position at all, because it brings rigor to the interview process. That's how we look at it.
Yeah, Dusty Baker is a good friend of mine, and we've talked over the years about the Moneyball type of situations, and he said that it had taken away from from his and other people that have been longtime people in sports, like managers or talent evaluators. It takes away from the nuances of the person. Is that a fair criticism?
No, I don't think it is, because I don't think anybody has said that you should simply make decisions based on the numbers. We like to provide the numbers because we want to provide the best information we can to our clients. And then it's perfectly fine, after looking at these numbers and looking how we've scored and ranked skills and attributes for a slate of candidates, to bring some subjectivity into it. And we often have clients that do that. And so there's a place where you can blend the quantitative approach and the qualitative approach, whereas most search firms only use the qualitative approach. We've simply added a dimension to what we do to get more information and better information to our clients.
Len Perna is with us. Fascinating, insightful conversation with him. He has 30-plus years experience in the sports and entertainment industry. We'll talk more about this as we continue across the country and around the world. We've got you on America's Sports Talk Show. Len Perna is with us on Sports Byline USA. We're talking about sports hiring, and he is certainly successful with his company, TurnkeyZRG. Let's go back to the beginning, Len, for just a moment. How did you get started in this? What was it that interested you about doing something like this?
Well, by this, do you mean sports? We could go all the way back to the beginning, how I got into sports, or do you mean executive recruiting?
Well, a combination of both.
So I'll give you both stories really quick. I got into sports as a young lawyer at a Michigan law school. I took a job at a law firm in New York City that was the law firm for Cap Cities ABC and ESPN. And I cut my teeth doing early sports deals for ESPN. Wound up then taking a job for the Tigers and the Red Wings, and wound up running the business operations of the Tigers and the Red Wings. I also ran the business ops for the Texas Rangers and the Dallas Stars. So I've been in sports my entire career. Every day of my career has been in sports. It's a dream come true for anybody out there listening. If you really want a thrilling, fantastic, satisfying career, sports is it. So that's how I got into sports. How I got into executive recruiting, I got it in my mind that to succeed in sports, you needed two things. You needed the best information or data, and you needed the best people. And so I actually, on the same day, started two companies. One company was called Turnkey Intelligence, and it was a data company. This is long before people were talking about data. And I started an executive recruiting company called Turnkey Search. And it was those two companies were sister companies. They ran in parallel for 20 years. And I think my thesis was correct. In order to be a winner in sports, you need the right data and the right people. I sold Turnkey Intelligence in 2018. I exited out of that business. I got a good exit out of it. And then in 2020, I sold, or really merged, Turnkey Search into ZRG, and that's why today we are called TurnkeyZRG.
I have some experience in this, in that my first agent was Bob Wolf, who represented me when I was on television in Boston. And then Lee Steinberg is a current limited partner in my company. And the stories that I have heard, and I heard from Bob as well, I just would laugh a lot of times. And I know you have had to deal with this because there's personalities, there's egos involved, there's big positions involved. And the strategy you have to use must be fascinating. Tell me some of the interesting things you've dealt with in this field.
Well, listen, I mean, a lot of times when you're filling a very big, important position, you're calling people that already have a good job. They already are successful. They already get paid a lot of money. They're already content with what they do. And so to convince somebody to leave a very good place where they're happy and take on a potentially a really difficult job, a new job, it might involve, relocating. So there is a lot of strategy to how you enter into a conversation like that with somebody who's, a pretty big hitter, that's had a lot of success, to convince them to take on the next challenge, start the next chapter. And that's something I think that we're pretty good at here.
Yeah, what about the challenge of trying to fill a position? And there are a couple of people that might be interested in it, Len, but they don't want to get that information out because of the current job that they have, knowing that if their employer, knew they were going after something else. What's the sensitivity there for you? And how do you, say, schedule people for meetings? I mean, I'm looking at your list, Charlie Baker, who is the new NCAA president, and all the other people in those type of roles. You worked with Derek Jeter to replace president of the Miami Marlins. What about those sensitivities? How do you deal with that?
I mean, I think that's why we've been very successful at TurnkeyZRG. We are known for the confidentiality of our conversations. We've developed a reputation for that when you have a phone call with our firm, people know that that's not going to get out. We're very good at keeping confidentiality, keeping secrets, keeping things private. And we actually bend over backwards to make sure that we are paying attention to all the little details that could result in a leak. I'll give you an example. We are working on a search right now for the next Big Ten commissioner, and we have not yet disclosed to anybody where the location of those interviews will be, what the dates of those interviews will be. And then when we bring people in to interview, we will not use their names at the hotel. We will use aliases at the hotel. We will have a chaperone with each person who's coming in to interview. That chaperone will get them a car, will be in the car with them. In a recent search, we were walking people through the kitchen of the hotel so they wouldn't have to go through the lobby. So we do actually put a lot of effort into making sure that somebody doesn't see somebody like Governor Baker walking through a hotel lobby to an interview.
When you take a look at your own staff and people you're going to hire, what is it you look for, Len?
I'm looking for people that are competitive. We like to hire people who have played team sports. We are the kind of culture where we support each other and help each other on all the different projects that we have going. So we need team players that like to compete, and compete means getting the big searches, winning the big searches. Once you've landed those, getting the best possible candidates into the funnel so that our clients have maximum optionality with a bunch of great candidates to select from. And in order to do all that, we've got an amazing group here, a real great team. So I'm looking for team players, and I'm looking for competitors.
When you think about your career and how successful you've been in it, what is the sense of satisfaction you get in what you do?
I literally have the best job in the world. I mean, seriously, if you look at, I get to work with, the NFL, baseball, basketball, all these different sports, pro sports, college sports. We're in the music business, entertainment. And we get to work with everybody. We sort of work across all lines. They're the best jobs, the best clients. It's an absolute dream come true, and I love it every day. Even on my worst days, I love this job.
How do you deal with the egos in all those businesses you mentioned?
I mean, I think the thing about what you do as a recruiter is it's not about the recruiter. It's not about us at all. We bring a lot of humility to it. And, we're looking at how people are aware of their own strengths and weaknesses. And so if we run into people that have huge egos, I think it makes it more difficult for us to advocate for them to get the next great job. We're actually looking for people like Charlie Baker who have an amazing resume, have done incredible work, but they've got the humility, they're humble, they're modest about who they are. They see themselves as servant leaders, and that's really what we're looking for, and we tend to shy away from people with the big egos.
In about 90 seconds that we have left, when you think back on your career, is there a particular moment, Len, that is kind of engraved in your mind that you'll never forget?
Other than doing this interview?
Yes. You're most kind.
Well, listen, it is, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be on your show. And I really just appreciate the time you're giving this. I would say, we recently, did place this president of the NCAA, and it's really one of the biggest and most important jobs in sports in this country. So it's an honor to be able to work on something like that. And it's pretty recent, but I think it's a real milestone for us. And we're very proud of the work that we did on that.
In about 40 seconds, if you had to crystal ball where sports in this field will go, say over the next 10 years, what might you expect?
I mean, sports is the great convener of the world. It is the one type of content that is almost guaranteed to convene a large audience that's passionate, leaning in, engaged. So I see sports, live sports in particular, as doing nothing but getting bigger and bigger and better, and more people will follow it, and we're lucky to be in it.
Len, I want to thank you. You have a sterling reputation, your company as well, TurnkeyZRG, leader certainly in the space, known for its professionalism, confidentiality, and tremendous hires. I appreciate the time, and I hope you'll come back and join me again where we can talk about some of the other aspects of what you do in sports and where it might be going.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Len Perna, again, has 30-plus experience in sports and entertainment, that industry. He's a top recruiter for coaches, commissioners, and team management for talent. We continue across the country and around the world. We've got you on Sports Byline.